Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. And today we have Mr. John Jayson. How are you, John?
Hey, Andrew. I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. I mean, we've been talking about this for 2 years, I think, nearly, to get you on the show. So, it's really good to get you here.
The mythical show,
And obviously,
it exists. It's here.
Say again, sorry?
The mythical show, it exists.
It's a mythical show.
Yeah,
Okay, like a mythical beast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. We'll talk about unicorns later. So yeah, thanks for coming on the show. And I suppose the key question that we obviously we have a lot of different founders and co-founders and CEOs, and I know that you're going to explain a little bit about what you do in a minute. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Say no more. Say no more. Oh no, sorry, I'm going into the content already. But we actually met at a book launch before that whole thing called the pandemic came along in London, didn't we? And at one of our mutual network friends who was launching a book, Mr. Ash Ali, Mr. Hassan Kuba, called The Unfair Advantage. So it was a pleasure to meet you there, and then we'll chart our little history from there. Yeah, but You, John, have exposed me to something I think is deeply rooted in my DNA, and it's been a pleasure to traverse the journey with you so far. But we'll cover that in a sec. So I suppose the quick question is that as we kick off, we talked to lots of obviously leadership teams and leaders and entrepreneurs and things like that. And one of the things that is I find fascinating is what people do in the morning. So people have 24 hours in a day. Yeah. How do you maximize the time, and how do you set your day up? What do you do to set your day up in a great way? So, is that something that you've kind of, embodied, embraced, and kind of got down in a really smart, great disciplined routine, or how does that work for you?
An excellently disciplined routine. Yeah. No, I actually like to exercise in the morning now. So I find I like to try and do that early before I start the day. Literally right at the moment, I'm coinciding it with watching some of the Ashes in Australia pre sort of 7 o'clock because I'm big fan of that. But I like to exercise in the morning and try and do that before 7, and then often I'd get my son up after that. So if my son's 2.5. So I like to get him up and spend a bit of time with him early on. And then I also kind of plan out my day. If I haven't done it the night before, I kind of plan out the things that I want to get done in the day, so that I haven't just and when I'm going to do them, so that I haven't just got a long to-do list that I'm never going to get through. I kind of prioritize the things I'm going to work on that day. And then the usual basics: breakfast, shower, and all that. Before getting started,
you don't need to shower. We're all working from home now, aren't we?
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's true. Although when we get on video calls like these, then we need to have at least shower from the sort of top half.
I don't know what they call that. There's probably a special name for it. So in terms of exercise, what do you do? Is there a particular sporting discipline that you follow, or is it kind of like you're more of an all-rounder?
Yeah, I'm big into football myself, so I try and I'm into my mid-30s now, so I try and keep myself fit for football by doing like sprints and speed endurance stuff. But I don't do that all the time. I also do kind of some 5K runs and lots of own weight stuff, so like press ups, pull ups.
Oh, like body weight stuff.
Yeah, okay. I don't do much on the sort of heavy lifting weight, but as you could probably tell. But I do a lot of body weight type exercises.
Okay. Yeah. And are you flexible then? You do lots of bending and stretching and stuff like that?
I should be. I'm not. I don't think I am particularly flexible. My calves in particular are not that my ankles are not that flexible. So I struggle with squats. So I do them. Right. I struggle to. I have to open my legs to really wide to actually get down. I don't know if that's I've never really been able to change that, but I try and keep up a certain amount of flexibility. but yeah, I don't think I'm fantastic at that.
And do you play football? You actively play football even now, even though you're in your 30s.
Yeah.
You know, which you implied like you were old man, but
Well, hitting
you're young man.
36, dude, I'd be the professionals will be retiring at this point. So I probably missed my chance now.
Just say the Scouse version of Ronaldo or something. You know, like
That's it. It's I try and play. I play a little bit less now. I've got the little one. But I do still play 11 aside when I can, and
oh, do you? Right,
5
cool.
aside as well when I can. So I like to keep.
And what position are you then? Are you goalie, or are you kind of centre forward or defence, or
more attacking? I could probably
I
would be winger or striker, sometimes centre mid.
What like Ian Rush or something kind of thing, or Kenny Dalglish, or
any sort of Scouse attacking player that's you can think of.
You can tell the genre that I remember for the Liverpool team. It's like Mo Salah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm happy with these comparisons. They're very generous. So,
yeah, you know, you'd be getting the golden, what's it called, the Ball d'Or, or whatever they call it. You know, that kind of...
No, I'm in the running this year, I think, but I just missed out, unfortunately.
That bloody Argentinian keeps winning it every time, doesn't he? You see, either goes to the guy from it's not Portugal, is it? It's Cristiano
Ronaldo.
From Portugal.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, Ronaldo. He's not from Portugal. He's from that island, from Madeira, isn't he? So it either goes from Madeira to Argentina, Argentina to Madeira, Madeira to Argentina. It's like that.
Yeah, never.
Maybe Argentina, Liverpool, Madeira, Argentina. Maybe it's that.
Yeah, well, when they
never say never.
If they start coming down to watch a bit more Sunday League, then you never know if they come to that game. We'll have to see.
Well, that's a little bit of stuff that I didn't know about. You see, you've been keeping that secret from me for a few years, so it's like it kind of it's like peel the onion.
That's it, and you'll find some fairly average skill underneath.
So thank you for sharing that little morning routine. It sounds like you're very well organised, actually. I mean, what time do you get up? What's your earliest you get up?
Between sort of 6 and 6:30ish. So yeah, not really early, but like
right. Okay.
But before like my little one wakes up, and
before he jumps on your bed. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. So not like I know some people get up. Well, in fact, don't you get up early yourself? Don't you?
Yeah, I get up about 5.
Yeah, so you're much earlier than me.
But you see, when your son gets older, you see, you're able to get him out of bed because he'll be like midday. You know, it'll be like you got that to look forward to. Anyway, so one of the things that we do in this kind of on this show is talk about people's journeys. You know, like people's personal journeys, people's business journeys. And I suppose one of the things we can start with maybe is the kind of projects. People call projects, or the things are working out. Once you've done all that sexy morning routine and you're kind of ready to go, what is on your agenda these days? Then what's keeping you awake at night and keeping you buzzing during the day? What's going on in John's world?
Yeah, so I as you know from working together, I run the Comedy Crowd. So our mission is empowering the world's comedy creators to produce exciting and fun comedy content to make people laugh. So and we do that through lots of different ways. I'm working with brand partners, working with other channels, and also just producing our own content to go out on different channels. So that's what we're doing. That's the big project.
The Comedy Crowd. Okay, so the Comedy Crowd is a business, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In obviously comedy, 'cause it's got comedy in its name, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that we've been doing a bit of stuff on that in the last period of time during the pandemic, a pandemic-proof proposition, PPP. Well, I know obviously a little bit about this, but the background to how you got involved in the Comedy Crowd and how you got involved in comedy. I mean, obviously, there is a lot of famous, you could say, comedy people from the Northwest, yeah. where obviously it sounds like you do originate from. Well, what happened? How did you get involved in that? Because that's quite a. Cause I know. Maybe you could explain a little bit about your background and then what happened. What triggered? Did you have like you woke up? I'm going to be the CEO of a comedy company. It's like what? How did that happen?
Yeah, so there's sort of two things came together really. So I was working at Ernst Young, so I was kind of like a management consultant, but I was getting a lot more into the startup world. So I actually got on a program that I went over to Moscow to work with an entrepreneur who was at the time a CEO of a 3D printing startup to kind of advise them for a period of time. And then I started joining some entrepreneurship startup groups at EY for people who are interested in getting into that. And so I was sort of learning about that. And at the same time, myself and Peter, who's one of the other co-founders in the Comedy Crowd, we grew up together and we were always interested in comedy. We were writing comedy scripts together and sketches, starting to kind of do some recordings ourselves. And yeah, I kind of saw an opportunity to marry those two things by enabling a whole community of creators who are looking to break into to comedy more as a more full-time, more seriously, and kind of produce content through the whole crowd and through a community rather than just kind of one or two people. And so that was the genesis of the idea, and it was something myself and Pete did initially whilst doing other jobs, building up a community, kind of learning about the industry and building up contacts. And then we took it more formally, more seriously, if you like, from the last sort of few years where, we've built a platform for our creators, and we started to do a lot more commercial work with partners. So it's kind of grown from there really.
And what was it? So what you said is it was like a childhood kind of idea. So when you said you wrote comedy sketches when you were kids. Well, how old were you doing that?
Not really so much as kids. It was more when we were kind of a bit more grown up, but like remembering. But it was from our experiences, our shared experiences. Having a co-writer really helps. So I found that being able to kind of bounce ideas off each other, say what's funny. And we have a very similar sense of humor, but which actually means that we probably give a pass to each other when other people might not find things funny.
Right.
But it really helps. But no, we weren't like 8-year-olds who said we're going to do a comedy business. The interest initially was in writing and performing and making content. But it just so happened that whilst I was getting into kind of entrepreneurship and learning more about that side of things, that the idea came to kind of to make Comedy Crowd as a production and a sort of an original style production company and distribution business. Yeah.
And who was, so if you think about yourself and Pete, or Pete and yourself, who would be your inspiration in the comedy genre? Who would be your kind of, I was going to say who would be your Gary Glitter or your kind of like your pop band on the wall, but it's like who would be your poster child, you could say. So
so there's a few. I loved the Royal Family growing up, the comedy. I liked Craig Cash, Caroline Aherne wrote that, and then so I really like that style of kind of northern humor. I was also a big fan of The Office, so Ricky Gervais, Steve Merchant, and then the podcast that they did with Carl Pilkington. So grew up on those and loved all of them. So there's a few sort of, there are a few kind of influences. Peter Kay's stand-ups. I remember when recorded stand-up, really, this shows how old I am now. I remember when recorded stand-up really took off because it wasn't a huge thing really, like filmed stand-up. And so I've now got a pile of VHSs that are no longer usable of Peter Kay live at the top of the tower in Blackpool. And
oh really?
And he was fantastic. That he was a real inspiration as well. So yeah.
I remember watching Phoenix Nights, and you just like him and Paddy McGuinness, as being the bouncers. And then he was like the owner of the nightclub, wasn't he, in the wheelchair and stuff like that. He was at different parts. And it was just like absolute absolute legend.
Yeah,
Um,
it's fantastic. Phoenix Nights as well. It's another good one. But no, yeah, Peter Kay was a brilliant inspiration as well. Yeah.
oh, so would you? So you, but obviously, comedy is quite a big market or a
Mm.
big industry. There's obviously the stand up as you mentioned, and then there's obviously sketches, and there's comedy there's like different types of comedy. Is there a particular style or that you kind of you like? Sound like you were writing comedy,
Mm.
and was that for a particular purpose or a particular genre or a particular style of comedy?
Yeah, so initially, myself and Peter, we were focused on sitcom. So your typical kind of in the UK, your typical kind of half-hour sitcom episode, it could be lots of different things, maybe a family or some sort of group of friends or something. In our case, one of the ones that we were writing was about our old football team. So it was our two kind of very archaic football managers from when we were younger, and the sort of practices it's changed a lot now, but what used to happen in amateur youth football. It was very much the kind of half-hour sitcom, and actually since starting the Comedy Crowd, we realised that a lot of people come into comedy in the same way. They want to make their sitcom, but we learned that going straight into making like a kind of a half-hour sitcom is not really something that you can do just off the bat. You're going to need to build up, practice, doing shorter form content, and learn to kind of grow and learn what works. Learn to hone your writing skills in different ways. Very much what you're right. So what we're talking about is writing for like production. So whether that's short sketches or sitcom or whatever, but not more that than stand up.
Right.
We're never to doing stand up, but yeah, we're talking more about like filmed content or animated content as well. Big fan of animated comedy, like South Park, The Old Simpsons.
Oh, right. Okay.
Well, yeah.
So basically, it's sketches and and sitcoms. That's more your kind of your thing. But you obviously mentioned some stand-up legends as well in what you were talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. So in terms of the Comedy Crowd, you said that you were kind of moved that in the last few years. You've moved kind of out of the kind of corporate world, you could call it, and then you've moved into this kind of, I suppose you could say, it's a new media startup. It's because people usually talk about they're going to develop some software, they're going to get $1 trillion from some investor and then scale it to be a unicorn or whatever. But it sounds like you've got a slightly different route, because obviously the comedy and the new media industry is a slightly different landscape. So how you found that?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one on the kind of the tech side. So we have experimented with a couple of different types of platforms to enable our creators over the last few years, but we've never really gone. The concept's always been focused on empowering creators and producing great content, rather than focusing on tech for the sake of tech. But actually, if there's an opportunity to do something exciting there, and one of the things we're working on now is more tech involved, I suppose. It's a new kind of style venue for online style venue for comedy creators and comedy content. But yeah, so we've kind of dabbled in various forms of tech, but it's not really been kind of the focus. Yeah, I would say. I mean, yeah.
So you touched on that about this kind of use of tech. So is it? Because I mean, obviously there's a lot of there's a lot of talk about this thing called with the metaverse and with Facebook renaming them their group company and stuff like that. Is that the kind of direction you're thinking about? Because obviously creators are like the new nouveau riche, you could say. They're the kind of the new the new economy, you could say. The individual person who's got those creative talents, and it sounds like the Comedy Crowd is helping people to get out there and coach and educate the market and also help them to grow as individuals. Is that kind of what the mission's? It sounds like you said about empowering creators to kind of map their journey as well. That's kind of like you could say it's your support function to that creator community.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We want to. We wanted everything that we do is geared around enabling and empowering creators. So whether that's like providing new opportunities that otherwise wouldn't be available, or giving access to to different types of mentors and different different support schemes and things, but ultimately all coming up with concepts that will enable people to make content that can be distributed in a good way. So, like for example, coming up with a constraint or an idea that people can then write, can write and produce comedy for, that we then can that we believe that we can sell, that we can distribute, and that we can get people excited about. So I suppose the difference between that and maybe a traditional, let's say, production company is that we deliberately open it up to a whole community and make it something that anyone can get involved in and anyone can enter.
Right.
That's kind of the ethos that we want to bring.
So it's kind of like a broad church. It's like there's like a very diverse community. And I presume, so how many people have you got in your community already then? How many creators have you got across the world?
Yeah, so we've got around 10,000 now, who we engage with kind of every week. I would say that the majority are probably UK, but there's quite a few US, and there are people from all over the world as well. We get entries to our competitions from different places in Africa, from the Far East, South America. So all over the world.
I suppose that's what I was going to say. Was that the thing is that whichever country you go into, obviously there's kind of like that local treatment of comedy.
Yeah.
But I was on a call, I remember, a while ago with some people in Abu Dhabi, and we were talking about comedy, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, there's some great comedians over here." And it's like even in a place you wouldn't logically associate with having comedy clubs or comedy comedians, they do actually have people that are putting content out there, doing previously doing live gigs and stuff like that. So it's I suppose it's a global phenomenon, isn't it? People want to laugh, people want to have humor, people want to smile. So
it is, absolutely. I think it's a uniquely human thing as well, laughing, finding things funny. So it definitely is a global thing. And there's obviously nuances. Like there's some comedy that doesn't really do well in one place, but it's particularly good in another country. And then there's other things like, say, Mr. Bean, for example, that seems to be universal and just appeal to everyone. In fact, if even more so in non-English speaking countries, probably because he didn't really speak English. So this.
Well, you just made funny facial expressions, didn't it?
Yeah.
Or got into different silly predicaments. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So in terms of what we talk about in the episode, we talk about what's the concept of peaks and valleys. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like, maybe I have a sneaky suspicion that you've got obviously you mentioned about Ernst Young, but I know that you've got a very prestigious academic background as well, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, but prestigious, might be an overstatement, but it's I started off. My degree was in physics and in astrophysics, so I did that, and I did a master's in that, and then I moved to Ernst Young and did the natural move to Ernst Young to do the chartered accountant qualification. So then I became, I suppose, I was qualified as a chartered accountant, both of which very important for a comedy entrepreneur. So it's set me up well.
It's like an extreme pivot, isn't it? It's like astrophysicist, accountant, comedy CEO.
Do this, get as far away from this as possible, and do this, get as far away from this as possible.
I'm sure in comedy there usually is some physics involved, and if you've got a funny comedy sketch, I suppose there is some defying physics sometimes.
Yeah. I wonder if part of the drive is as well. I don't like being kind of pigeonholed as one thing, so I quite like the idea of being able to kind of do lots of different things. So Doing the sort of unexpected things is a good way to do that.
So in terms of we talked about peaks and valleys, and I'm just coming back on that point. What would you describe? Because obviously people, one of the things I've found really interesting with the guests I've had on, and we're trucking on to hopefully in Q1 2022 we'll have which when we're publishing this episode 100 episodes of the G&T session, which would be a bit of a milestone, which would be fantastic to celebrate with a little G&T maybe. The diversity of people's backgrounds and actually where they end up, because I think you're an example in kind. Obviously, you couldn't chart, you couldn't plan that. Yeah, you just emerged. Obviously, it's, it's amazing how life presents those opportunities to you. But I suppose the thing is as you've gone in your journey, what would you say would be you obviously talked about some of the peaks you've had. Unless you call working for EY as a peak or a valley, I suppose. But what would be your thoughts around that point? What would be the ones you want to share around some of the things you've learned?
So I think with entrepreneurship in particular, there's I think the peaks and valleys are much more pronounced. So like your peaks are really high, euphoric, and then your valleys you obviously take are big hits, and you have to kind of get through that. I find that's probably more so than in Ernst Young, or in more of a corporate job. What sort of things? Something I found is I had to it was quite a big break from moving from like the corporate job into entrepreneurial world, because when you're in that kind of corporate job, and you know this yourself, I guess, from your own background as well, like you go through you have assessment appraisals, and there's a clear definition of if you're doing something good or if you're not doing something good. There's defined success criteria for you, and then if you break out of that, then there's no one to tell you that there's no one there, to say what you're doing is right or wrong or good or bad. There's no 6 monthly, or in some cases monthly, appraisals of how you're doing against a set of scorecards. You've got to kind of fend for yourself.
Yeah, sometimes it's continuous assessment these days, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I find that's really healthy. I mean, I remember when I was doing the kind of corporate job, one of the things that I found was like you end up judging yourself on your performance on your kind of year end grading, and then so much goes into that, and it's one very narrow definition of whether you're being successful or not. And so I found I've kind of had to create my own when doing the comedy crowd, setting my own goals, and so the peaks and troughs are more pronounced, but there's no one really there to say, I suppose, is the big thing. There's no one really to say whether something's good or something's not good. If that in any way answers the question at all.
Yeah, I suppose I reflect back onto my working for a very large retailer before, was that we used to do annual performance reviews and all that kind of stuff, and then you'd actually look at the distribution. Yeah. So I don't know whether you call that a peak or a valley. You'd have to basically work out, and then obviously you'd have to then work out in the organisation structure who fitted into that bell curve.
Yeah.
So that was what I always found challenging, because I think it's the thing about having that continuous feedback, I think, is definitely the way to go these days. Which is there's a great book, I think, by, I can't remember the guy's called. He wrote the kind of the Founder's Dilemma. He's life is a startup, which is, I've read that. It's highly recommended, because it kind of reminds you of some of the things that you go through, and what you find is it's uncharted territory, isn't it? You don't always have all the answers, but if you apply yourself, you can usually find a path through it. And I think that's where also as you get into a certain place, if you've had that circle of people that you're speaking to and bouncing off, not everybody has all the answers, but through the osmosis of your network and your relationships, you usually can find a path through it, or you can get some help on something.
Yeah.
So that's what I find really rewarding these days. It gets me out of bed at silly o'clock in the morning anyway. So, but get into the gym. Pump some iron. Yeah, I've got my Under Armour thing on. You so you got to pump some iron like The Rock. maybe that, maybe not. No, thanks for sharing that. I think it's definitely a different environment that you're in now from compared to. I've never worked for a professional services firm like EY. I nearly joined Price Waterhouse in the 90s actually.
All right.
I got offered a job there, but I decided to join the tech company SAP instead, the German tech company. So and then got sent to PwC to work on the BBC project with PwC. So it's like I was going to join Price Waterhouse, then they merged with Coopers and Lybrand, and then got involved in BBC project, which was quite interesting. Working for John Smith, the CFO of BBC, so it's quite interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, Midas it was called. Anyway, so so in terms of there's this thing about tech, right? So you're in a comedy genre, which is not normally associated with tech, but obviously new media businesses are springing up all over the place. You think about Netflix and all these kind of the people at traditional places like NBC Universal, where they're actually having to create a digital estate, to get their content out there. And they've obviously got some amazing back catalogs. What are you excited about in the future about this whole technology landscape? I know you touched on a little bit of it a bit earlier about some of the projects you may be working on right now, but what are the things you're seeing that are really quite exciting and fast moving that you think maybe the comedy crowd could benefit from?
Yeah, so I think when you're talking about tech in relation to comedy, your first impression might be something like a comedy club, a stand-up night, or even watching something on TV, and you're thinking like, how's that related to tech? Well, I guess it relates in like production and distribution. So with production of content, like there's online platforms that have enabled people to come together when they're not necessarily in the same location, and this is something we've done to connect people that way. And there's also now a lot of amazing creative tech going on in the kind of VR space. So, which is actually enabling people to appear in one location when they're actually in another location. And what that can do is then it's actually possible to like create a sketch or something with people not even in the same room together, because we can project a hologram of one person into another room. And then you can.
It's a bit like Obi-Wan Kenobi does comedy kind of thing.
A little bit like that, yeah. I think that's the official description. Yeah, so on the.
Well, no. I was thinking about with Luke Skywalker used to talk to Obi-Wan, when he was, when he was trying to see, which way do I talk, what do I do, Yoda, what do I do, and like a hologram kind of appears, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's so I think on the production side, there's a lot of interesting things happening, and then in terms of like distribution, I mean, obviously one of the big thing, the biggest thing in the world of kind of tech and media content at the moment is probably the move around NFTs and the metaverse you mentioned earlier. And I mean, right now as we're speaking, there's kind of a scramble for everyone to look at how they can use their digital assets in using blockchain, using it as NFTs, and it's an interesting time because there's obviously I've heard lots of people describe it as like the start of the the kind of the start of the original internet in the kind of late 90s, when there was a bit of a boom, and it's kind of everyone's experimenting with things, and then one or two ultimately survive. So it's a really interesting time.
Oh, you mean like the dot-com boom and bust kind of thing of the 99, 2000?
Exactly, exactly that. So there'll be some big hits that will be around the moment, and then a few of them will survive. A lot of them won't. But actually, that's great. Like the experimentation needs to happen in order to work out how it all works. So that's something else that we're kind of excited about and interested in. And actually, we're kind of working on a project that's sort of marrying a few of those different things. So enabling creators, putting on exciting shows virtually, and then also kind of enabling people to get involved in that with digital assets. So
right.
we're kind of that's something we're looking forward to in the next year, and I think it is an exciting space to be in.
So that means I've got to have you on the show again. Then when you do this grand reveal, this exclusive reveal on the G&T sessions, it's like the curtains open like that,
The G&T,
there's somebody there naked, playing a piano like Monty Python, something like that, playing an organ,
rises out of
like
G&T,
like laughing,
yeah.
Huh? Yeah, drinking some G&T, like at the organ, like a Hammond, yeah. What was that guy called? It was Terry Gilliam, wasn't it, that did that, I think.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
And now for something completely different.
I'll have to watch some more big G&T podcast reveals, because that sounds really good.
Well, no. I'm saying that you can't tease us like this. You can't tease the audience like this and tease the host, with this kind of like this grand plan and then not tell us anything about it. It's like, oh yeah. So I have to get you back on the show again. Jeez, grief! I'm gonna have to charge you next time. No. So yes, no, I agree that it's some of the stuff that some of the brands are starting to do with the collaborations with some of these new, new brands, you could say, new digital brands, and also the thing about digital art and the stuff that People Crap did. This I think it was earlier this year, wasn't it, with the the $69 million for all these 10 years of art. I mean, but some of the art is absolutely awesome, absolutely staggeringly on point. And I actually went on his Instagram page today. Actually, he's only just got 2 videos now. I don't know if he's had to take down all the previous Instagram pictures because he sold them to that guy in UAE. But he just had a couple of videos up there. And the funny thing was, I think I might have mentioned to you the other week. So Joe Toscano, who was one of my very early guests on the show, a couple of years ago, he was in Brazil, and he was just about to launch his book, Automating Humanity. And me like like completely sometimes half asleep. He says, "Oh yeah," he says, "I've got this guy called Mike, Mike doing the art in the book." And then when this whole thing blew about People Crap and this whole big deal about NFT, digital assets, things like that, digital sale, I looked in the book and I said, "Oh my God, it's the same guy." So the guy that had actually done all the art in Automating Humanity for Joe was actually People Crap. I mean, that's like 2.5 years ago. So he just I said to Joe, I said, hats off to you. It's like you're ahead of the curve. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Joe ends up doing the Social Dilemma, the Netflix film as well, with all the Twitter and technology guys there. So I know there's a kind of a view about the yin and the yang of technology, but yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, all that stuff. I know Gary Vee's saying that, well, on Instagram or every time he's on something, he's saying, everybody will own digital assets in the next 10 years. So by 2030, people will be owning a part of a digital asset. But I suppose you think about domain names. Domain names are a digital asset, aren't they?
Yeah. And so, anyone who bought up the the best domain names back in the late 90s obviously made quite a lot of money off those. So I suppose that's the sort of premise that people are going at it with. I mean, there's different viewpoints on it. I mean, some people say that it's like just enabling the people who are already rich and have followers to monetize even more. Whereas, but I think it's somewhere in the middle, really. I think there are it is a really interesting way of kind of experimenting with new things. So there'll be some exciting stuff coming out of it.
Exactly. So in terms of the kind of you talked about some of the stuff that you're excited about. I mean, I suppose on the other side of that, what are you most grateful for?
Most grateful for. I'm grateful for the fact that I have the opportunity to actually, to I suppose be an entrepreneur, to experiment with things and to try things so I have the background, the financial opportunity to be able to do that. because obviously not everyone's in a position to actually do that. So yeah, and so yeah, but both in terms of like, you know, family life and that side of things, and then yeah, in being involved in something.
Well, I mean, like follow your passion. Is that? I mean, I know it's an overused phrase, I suppose. Is that kind of? It sounds like you've finished your childhood that you've always wanted to do something in comedy. Is that right? It's kind of like it floated your boat. It kind of got you excited. It kind of. Yeah. And now you're actually doing it.
It's following things you're interested. I mean, I never. I wouldn't say I didn't grow up wanting to do like I said, wanting to do a comedy business or anything. But it was always just it was always something that I was interested in, and I always wanted to do something that I felt like, you know, was having a positive impact and was a challenge, but was also, you know, exciting. I didn't want to kind of settle for something that I was doing because sort of someone else said I should do it. That was always kind of a big thing.
Right.
So, yeah. So I guess I'm grateful I've got in a position that I can do that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I think it's very interesting. It's a very interesting, you know, you've had a very interesting journey already. And, you know, I think with this, I suppose it's, you know, if you think about growth and technology, it's a bit like, how do you most appropriately, you know, help the creators that are part of the community within Comedy Crowd and help them grow? Because there's a growth piece around, you know, opening them up to opportunities, because, you know, through their experience, they're going to grow their capability and their skills. And, you know, I know that you've had some good success stories around that with a number of people in the community, and, you know, they're getting really good visibility and traction with some absolute legends in the global comedy industry that we know. Wink, wink. It's more to be found out soon. So, you know, it's all credit to you, you know, you and Pete and Omar and the rest of the team about, you know, what you've been doing. So it's I suppose one of the things I was going to say, finish up on that, was about what we talked about at the end, was about pearls of wisdom. So, you know, you come from being an astrophysicist, a master astrophysicist, a chartered accountant, and obviously you could have stayed at EY and probably been a partner in EY at this point if you wanted to go down that track and, you know, have an interesting life down that route. But then obviously you've gone into startups and entrepreneurship and comedy. You know, what have you learned? And if people were listening to this episode, you know, what would be the kind of takeaways and pearls of wisdom that you want to share about it, you know, that you think is important for them to consider as part of their journey?
Yeah, I think taking a step back and like creating your own definition of success, I think is really important. Like I think not relying on like just what everyone would expect you to do necessarily is something that I think is important. I mean, when you're in a bubble of something, it can be really hard to step out of that. Like, so when you're like, for example, in certain corporate work, you know, if everyone's doing the same thing and there's expectations around what you do, then it's really hard to step out of that. And even when you start a business, it's like you can be focused on an idea, and then it's you know, there's an expectation of way to do things, but actually, again, being able to sort of step back and have your own definition of kind of what success should be is important, and kind of keeping that. So yeah, and having a few principles as well that you can apply to, you know, when times get tough, which they will. Yeah, so you're not just kind of being reactive every time. You know, you've got some ways that you approach things that helps, I find. Yeah, I don't know if if those are pearly enough for the pearls of wisdom, but
they're very pearly. We could polish the pearls. I mean, I suppose one of the things I was going to say to you is, if somebody was going to be interested more about Comedy Crowd, and, you know, what would be, is there some particular content you think people would really like that you and the team have helped to curate and bring to the world over the last few years? Is there any particular sketches that spring to mind that you think would be a bit of a giggle for people, putting people a smile on the face if they're feeling a bit not in a great place?
Yeah, so there's a few. I mean, on our website we've got some on the front of the website. One of the one good one that's timely at the moment from a creator in our community, Christian Jegard, is Scrooge Sleeps Naked, which is pretty much does exactly what it says on the tin, but it's just very timely for the Christmas theme. And that's a really good sketch. And then there's a few some work we did with O2 in 2021 that you obviously involved in as well, and we did a couple of some really good sketches out of the back of that. Living in a Bouncy Castle was a particularly popular one that came from that. I'd recommend, and group chat joke as well. When a group chat joke goes wrong, that's another one. But there's a few. I mean, if people have a look at the if anyone wants to have a look at
well, maybe what we could do is as part of, maybe you could share with me some links, and I could publish those links with the episode when we put it out there, because that's one way of sharing the love kind of thing, with the world. Because I think there is some excellent content that's being built, and this is meeting the creators and getting to know them as well is always very interesting. It's some zany guys and girls out there, but some of the stuff they create is absolutely inspired and brilliant. It's really great to see something being created in front of you, and then obviously being delivered. And you mentioned some of the companies that the Comedy Crowd has been working with, and I know there's some other interesting things that are going to happen in 2022 that will make it even more exciting. So fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I know it's taken far too long to get you on the show, and obviously, when you've got this kind of cunning plan around, metaverse domination or whatever it's called, then maybe we can invite you back and you can give us a bit of a grand reveal, or maybe you heard it here first on the G&T sessions. Something like that. But thank you very much for coming on the show, and it's been an absolute pleasure spending some time with you. That was John Jayson, should I say, who's the co-founder and CEO of the Comedy Crowd.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, Andrew. It's been brilliant. Cheers.
And that was Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. Have a lovely day. Take care. Ciao, ciao.